Good morning and welcome to Three Things You Need to Know. My name is Pam Jacobson. For those of you who do not know me, I am board certified in functional medicine and have a long career in health, spanning from my original training as a nurse and specialty in oncology, all the way through Chinese medicine, and today practicing functional medicine. I work with clients all over the country, helping them to optimize their health and regain vitality and the quality of life they deserve. I have put my contact information here in the chat area. And for those of you that are viewing this as a video later on, you can reach me through any of the Healing Sanctuaries venues, Facebook, Instagram, our website, and so forth. So without further ado, three things you need to know. We're starting today with magnesium. So each week I'm trying to cover a nutrient. Many of you take supplements, many of you just buy them over the counter without a lot of information or understanding of what you're doing or using or taking. Many of you may be on supplements because you've seen me as a patient or maybe another practitioner. And I feel it's important to be educated about why we would be putting these things into our body. Why is it necessary? How is it helpful? And how could it potentially be harmful? I think we have to be very careful in just assuming that because something is available to me to purchase over the counter in a grocery store that it's safe. Many times you can create bigger problems for yourself when you don't really know what you're doing. So my goal is to help all of you get informed. So today we're going to talk about magnesium because it is probably, well, it is without a doubt the most important and most abundant mineral in the human body. It is a cofactor. So, what that means is it's a partner or a helper in over 300 enzyme processes in the body. So, magnesium is kind of involved in everything. And if you don't have adequate levels, and more importantly, if you don't have the right types of magnesium that can be well absorbed in the body, it can create problems over time. So it's a cofactor. It is critical for the body's main energy production of ATP. So again, super important. About 90% of it is stored in our musculoskeletal system, in the bones, and in our tissues. As I said before, it's the most abundant mineral that we have, but unfortunately, it's no longer abundant in our food supply, right? It's one of the many minerals and nutrients and things that are deficient now in the food supply, whether you're buying organic or growing it yourself. It's the soils that no longer are rich in these things to the degree that they once were. And so we are seeing deficiencies now in all cultures, really, but really even particularly our culture where we have abundant access to food. So really important to understand there are 9 different forms of magnesium, which is what I think makes perhaps it confusing for the public is, well, what form should I be taking and what works for what? And the reality is that the scientific data around magnesium is a bit controversial, right? It's the studies, there weren't necessarily standards in place. And so you've got some conflicting information. But we do have, I think, enough good information coming from scientific sources to guide us down the right path in terms of the best forms of magnesium, those that are likely to be more in the body and more useful. So out of those 9 forms, there are really basically 2 kind of categories, if you will, of magnesium types that are found to be more available, more absorbed and used properly in the body. And those would be the type of magnesiums that come from what's called organic salts. Those would be citrate, malate, score percentage of magnesium that's available. Some of them as high as 60%, and some of them, down in the lower like teens. So when you see the milligrams of magnesium on the back of your bottle, it'll also say the form of magnesium. Sometimes the product will also say available elemental magnesium, and that's the actual amount of magnesium that's available for the body to use. So just because it says, say, 350 milligrams in the dose, that doesn't mean that that's how much magnesium your body's going to get. And in fact, depending on the form, it could be considerably less than that, which is why you will hear people say, or you will hear practitioners advise you to take, larger doses, 600 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, whatever that might be. My role today really is to just kind of inform you about magnesium, give you an idea around dosing, but really impress upon you the importance of magnesium and the fact that it's very likely that you, along with all of us, are somewhat deficient in magnesium. And the good news is you can't hurt yourself with it. So, using magnesium. Now, for those of you who haven't heard me speak before, anytime I talk about a particular supplement or a test or a treatment of some kind, I am in 99.9% of the time able to give you access to that or help you get access to that. So if you're wanting to know where to go to buy something or how to access services, please reach out to me. Again, my information's here, or you can reach out through any of the healing sanctuaries, various social venues. So having said that, the best forms of magnesium are the magnesium salts and then the magnesium chelate, which is actually transported or absorbed in the body a bit differently from the organic salts. And the chelate form is going to be your glycinate and your bisglycinate. And there are those of us in the functional medicine profession that tend to gravitate toward that particular type of magnesium because it has been shown in many, many studies and obviously anecdotally to be one of the better absorbed magnesiums. So that gives you an idea, that if your magnesium is glycinate or bisglycinate or citrate or malate, then it's likely a good product. If it's not one of those, then it may be a little less bioavailable or absorbed in the body. So having said that, the key, I think one of the biggest keys with magnesium dosing that I think many even practitioners may not be completely aware of is that you do want to avoid taking single dose large amounts of magnesium. And the reason is because there is a mechanism, a protective mechanism in the body that will actually shut down the absorption when in the presence of high doses. So it can actually counter effect your ability to absorb magnesium. So really the best thing to do with magnesium is smaller doses spread out, which makes it a little bit more challenging if you have to take it 2 or 3 times a day. But it is the more effective way to get a higher, more usable amount of magnesium in the body. And it's one of the reasons why you will see small amounts of magnesium in a lot of your products. It helps with absorption of those products, but it also helps to spread magnesium out over doses. So that would be, I would say, a key pearl takeaway from this in terms of magnesium dosing would be to take smaller doses, maybe 200 or 100 milligrams, and do that in 3 or 4 doses throughout the day. How much do you need? Somewhere between 400 and 800 milligrams is sort of a standard idea. Here's the good news about magnesium. You have a protective mechanism where when you start to reach levels that are beyond what are needed, you will get loose stool, or actually, if you take a huge dose, you'll just get diarrhea. That's what your milk of magnesia types of products were, or your prep for bowel prep for a colonoscopy, for instance, is high doses of magnesium that cause the body to get pretty significant diarrhea. So it's a common practice because we can't really tell how much magnesium someone might need. You can test, but the testing is a little challenging and somewhat controversial to say, is that really an adequate amount of magnesium? So oftentimes what we'll do is have you start at the lower end of that dosage range and slowly titrate yourself up in dose until you get a little bit of a loose stool. So many of us have bowel irregularity that, we can get up to that 800 milligrams or even 1,000 milligrams of magnesium a day and not any kind of loose stool. So you can self-monitor your dosing, but, the between 400 and 800 milligrams. I particularly prefer, again, the glycinate, bisglycinate. I also really like the powdered forms. I got a question here about, what's my favorite? So I just said glycinate, bisglycinate. I think many of you that watch us on a regular basis or are my patients already know that I use a lot of orthomolecular products. The reason for that is, aside from the fact that they are probably some of the best products I've ever used in terms of what I see in my clinical practice and the effectiveness, But I appreciate them as a company. They're one of the larger nutraceutical manufacturers, and they put a lot of money into research and education. And I really appreciate that about them. And I use their products quite frequently. I do like their powdered reacted magnesium, so it's even more bioavailable. And it's great flavored. And I like my patients to use that at bedtime. It helps relax the nervous system. Some of the areas of the body that magnesium impact, right? If impacting 300 different enzyme processes, you can imagine there's not an area that it doesn't touch. So it relaxes your musculoskeletal system. It relaxes the nervous system. It helps with regulating the beating of the heart. It can help with bowel regularity. It helps with, certainly deepening the sleep. It can help the brain function better. So see, wound healing. There's just so many areas. But I particularly like it at night because it helps to relax us. You can also use magnesium topically and externally. Epsom salt is a magnesium. It's a salt. And you can use that in a bath. There's other forms you can use as well. But part of the sleep hygiene routine, we've talked about sleep hygiene a lot, is a warm bath. Great idea to throw some magnesium in there. So 400 to 800 milligrams a day. Think about a powdered form at bedtime. I like reactive magnesium. Those of you that already have a full script account, you could just go on there and order it. So everything you needed to know right now about magnesium, super important. You're likely to be deficient. I don't routinely test my patients because I don't think that the information is helpful clinically or accurate. I think most of us are deficient, and I will typically have my patients use magnesium at bedtime for all of those great benefits that I mentioned. So got a question here. Based on my experience, would I consider magnesium a supplement everyone should take daily? Absolutely, yes, it's essential. It is a mineral. It is the most abundant mineral in the body. It is deficient in the majority of us. We do get and can get some from our diet, but unfortunately, we don't see that as enough. We don't see it playing out to be enough for our daily needs. And so, again, remember, magnesium is responsible in large part for our cellular energy, or at least a big helper for that. So we want to make sure we've got adequate amounts of magnesium. So absolutely daily essential, should be used every day. Okay, on to item number 2. Organizing for success, right? So this is something I talked about to my level 10 health group in this past week. They're doing a big 60-day health challenge there, weight loss challenge. And, you know, regardless of what your goal might be for health optimization or anything, right? Whether this is if you have career goals or you have relationship goals, whatever that might be, if we don't organize and plan, we're not likely to be successful. So I wanted to just talk, briefly about, give you some structure around organizing for success. So I think first and foremost, and I talked a little bit about this last week, but I want to reiterate it again, and I'm probably going to consistently bring this up. I challenge all of you to really consistently and regularly check in with the reason why you're doing something. So this Q&A is all about health and health optimization. So why are you here? Why are you seeking this information? What is it that you are wanting? What drives you to seek this information? For some people, they already have a health condition. Others, maybe recognize that their health is beginning to decline, and they want to do everything they can to age well. So really examine your why, because it really will be the impetus, the thing that fuels you to do the work to reach the goal. Then I think once you understand the why, it's important to tune into the goals, right? Is it that I want to lose weight, or I recently got diagnosed with high cholesterol and I want to make sure that I'm protecting my heart. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. What's my goals? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish, right? I want better energy. I want to sleep better, whatever that might be. I think, first understand your why, then be clear about your goals, because that gives you a sense of destination. Where am I going from here, right? What do I want to accomplish? And then to organize to be successful for those goals, I've kind of divided it into 2 areas: planning and preparation. So in the planning, there's a few key things, and I'm going to relate this to what I do on a daily basis or a weekly basis, because I found it not only to be helpful for myself, but it is a common discussion and recommendation that I make for my patients. And this is the strategy or the recipe, if you will, for helping them to be successful in reaching their health optimization goals. So I think it starts with choosing a consistent time each week that you will use to plan your success for the following week, right? So we're going to plan ahead. And for me, that's Sunday morning. So Sunday morning over breakfast, my family, we talk about what does the next week look like, who's doing what, are there meetings, are there meals out, are there, just getting a feel for the lay of the land the following week. And then I recommend that I actually insist that you use one calendar, your calendar, your daily calendar, the calendar that you have your appointments on, right? Your meetings, your obligations that you've already agreed to are somewhere for all of us. We have something, some way to track that. Whatever that is for you, that's the system that I want you to use, because what you're going to do now is plug in your health optimization, your daily self-care plan in around the obligations that are already on that calendar. So we want to use the same instrument, the same tool. And now we're going to sit down during our planning time and we're going to plug in all of the things that are going to help us to reach our goals, right? We're going to plug in the time that we will wake up and go to sleep, right? That's very important. Sleep is number one on my list. And if we don't plan for tonight, my meetings are all done at 7. I will have dinner at X, and I will be in bed by 10 o'clock. Okay. And then I will be up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock the next morning, whatever that is, it needs to be on your calendar, right? Just like your appointment. If I have an appointment on Wednesday at 1, I'm very likely to show up for that appointment on Wednesday at 1. If I have it on my calendar that Wednesday at 9 a.m., I'm going to do a 15-minute meditation, and I've set reminders to remind me about that, I'm much more likely to do it. So I'm talking about every single thing in your schedule for the day, not only your obligations, but all of your health optimization, daily self-care pieces of the routine are there as well. So what time am I going to get up? What time am I going to do my morning meditation? What time am I going to have breakfast? And thinking ahead about what that looks like, right? Because while I'm writing these things in, I'm also making my shopping list, especially if weight management is an issue for you. This is an important time for you to start to think ahead about your meals so that you can plan for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in prepping. But during the planning time, as I'm marking down, I'll have my breakfast at 9:30 a.m. And this is what it's going to look like for the week. I know what I'm going to need to buy at the grocery store or order online or whatever that might look like. So we sit down with our calendar, we plug in our sleep time, our meals, our meditations, our exercise, right? Those are the 4 kind of key areas that you should populate that calendar with for that coming week. And then you write this into your calendar. And there's a brain body connection that happens when we write things down. So I'm a big advocate for writing it down. And then when the week comes in the nighttime before you go to bed, you then mark off that you did all of those things. So it's accountability. So you're being accountable to the plan. So again, we have a strong why. We're clear about our goals. Now we're planning. We put everything on our calendar, not just our work obligations and our social obligations, but our health optimization obligations as well. We do that consistently at least once a week. That seems to work for me and most of my patients. And we write it down so that we're visually connecting with it. And then we kind of track it during the week at night by marking off that we did all those things. At night, I have a little journal and I put a check mark. Yes, I worked out. Yes, I followed my dietary plan. Yes, I did my meditation. Whatever those things are, I am checking off and being accountable to myself. So that's really the kind of the components of the planning section. The prepping section then, and this can all still be done on the same day. I pick Sunday because it's to be a day that I set aside to not work, but to focus on family, home, and prep for my next week's success. So when I'm prepping, this is when I'm going to be, again, looking at all those categories. Do I need anything specific to help me be successful with my sleep. Maybe I need to make sure that I've got enough melatonin or magnesium, for instance, or I've refilled, my hormone replacement or whatever it might be that's going to impact my sleep. My stress response management, right? Do I need to do anything there? Set my reminders, make sure my timers are working so that I remember to do my meditation and so forth. Probably the biggest portion of what happens for me on Sunday in preparation for success is going to be around my diet for the week. And so this is where I have created my shopping list. I will generally do my shopping on Sunday, or I might go online and order things that I need to order that will come in during the week to help me kind of supplement my food preparation for the week. But I do the lion's share of it on Sunday. I shop, I plan ahead, I look at recipes that I might want to use so I can complete my shopping list. And then I do as much as I can cooking, chopping, cleaning, organizing and preparing so that it's quick for me when the week comes, right? I can just grab and go. I use for those of you that are on the go during the day, you can pack a cooler and take it with you so that you're not, eating out or going through fast food. But again, all of this takes some ahead of time thinking and prep and planning. So when I say organize for success, that's really, what I'm talking about. Understand why, have your goals, plan ahead, and then prep for success as much as you can. There's a lot of things that we can get ready on a weekend day that will make us successful for the following week. So organizing for success, it's super important, guys. If you really want to optimize your health, I've talked incessantly about the importance of sleep and sleep hygiene and all of these other things. But if you don't actually take some time during the week to think about those things and prepare yourself for the coming week, you're likely to think, oh, this is a great idea, but never get it done. I've had many wise mentors, and many of them have said the same thing. If it's not on your schedule, it's not going to get done. So if your health optimization is important to you, you got to schedule it. I have a question. Let's see. I recently started, planned, and organized fasting each week. It's actually fairly simple structurally and health wise. Do I recommend forms of fasting? I do. And I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but I'll mention it again. I think that there's some good science behind fasting. There's lots of different ways to approach it. There's a great book by Dr. Jason Fung, which is a sort of a guidebook for fasting, and a number of different online resources available for fasting. I personally use a combination of timed eating, which is a window of time, eating between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m., and then, fasting the rest of the time each day. And then oftentimes I'll take one day during the week where I, fast from breakfast to breakfast. And then, once or twice a year, I'll do a longer week-long, what's called a fasting mimicking diet. So I do actually really believe in fasting. It's not necessarily for everyone. And so I think you need to understand your personal health and needs. But I think Jason Fung's book is super helpful. And there are some good online, one of my colleagues and somewhat one of my mentors is doing a kind of online fasting group right now. And you can find him under Leaders or Learners online. But this is something that I think is worth looking at in terms of health optimization for sure. But take some planning, absolutely. So item number 3 is your heart health, right? So I want to give just a little quick personal story. This is something, especially in the past few years, that I've become very interested in and really passionate about for a number of reasons, not the least of which is my own personal health, right? I have a pretty significant cardiovascular family history, right? Lots of relatives that have had strokes and heart attacks and heart issues. My sister died very young of a heart failure situation. So I've always thought myself to be, since I've been interested in health pretty much my whole life, I always just assumed that I was very healthy and I didn't have to worry about things, and I ate right and I exercised and I did all these things. And then a few years ago, I did an advanced cardiovascular workup on myself, a blood panel, which I highly recommend and certainly can help anyone who's interested in having that done. And I found out that my lipids and my blood sugars even were really not in the optimal range, and in fact were somewhat far out of range. And I saw a cardiologist who was really concerned and put me through some further testing. Fortunately, I did not have any evidence of significant cardiovascular disease at this point, but maybe some early warning signs. And so it made me really stop and think about and look at how was I managing this for myself, and more importantly, what was I doing with my patients in my practice as far as looking at their cardiovascular health, and not just assuming that because somebody externally looks okay that they're actually making decisions. Because cardiovascular health, first of all, let's just review cardiovascular system, right? It involves the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood. And it has its only purpose, its purpose for circulating blood is not its only purpose, right? It's actually has some really important functions like transporting nutrients and oxygen and hormones. It provides you with immune protection. It regulates the body temperature. It helps to control fluid pH and water in the cells. So it has many really important functions in the body, and it's the leading area of concern for disease, especially in our Western world. And a lot of that reason has to do with lifestyle, right? We see cardiovascular disease as primarily a lifestyle problem. And some of the risk factors for that are central obesity, right? Being heavy around the middle. We use waist circumference measurements as a way to determine if somebody has this, but just being overweight in general, right? Above your weight. Having trouble with blood sugar management, trouble with lipids, that's your cholesterol management, and problems like hypertension. I mean, these are all pieces and parts of cardiovascular disease and indicators of disease, but it's really lifestyle factors mainly that drive this process. Now, yes, there are some underpinning things genetically, but again, and I've said this before, genetics is really just loads the gun, right? It's a predisposition for. It's what you lay on top of your genetics, your epigenetics, your external factors, things like your lifestyle, environmental exposures, that actually pull the trigger. So I don't think that you can say cardiovascular disease is genetic, but that you may be predisposed genetically to have a problem if you have these other lifestyle risk factors like smoking, sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, high sugar, bad foods, this typical standard American diet, overconsumption of alcohol is a big one. Stress is huge. I mean, in some of the texts that I use in my training, stress oftentimes is the number one reason for cardiovascular disease. Um, Environmental toxins. So in many cases, those are external inputs that we may not have direct control over or be directly aware of, but there's many environmental toxins that we expose ourselves to on a daily basis that we could control for. So here's what I would say was a lesson for me that I hope is a good takeaway for you, is that don't assume just because you don't have a strong family history that you have normal cardiovascular function, or that you don't already have some evidence of disease. I think it's important to be tested, and it's really one of the only ways that you're going to know. And there's some great, easy blood tests that we can do now that can give us some ideas. There is a test called a coronary artery calcium score, which can give us also some idea if we've already got some calcifications in the vessels of the heart. And there's other more invasive testing, but I think you can start with something as simple as an advanced lipid panel and good understanding of blood sugar management. And those are simple blood tests that any practitioner can order. I certainly can help you get those, and I would recommend, if you have not had that done. A standard lipid panel is not, I don't find to be very helpful. Total cholesterol. I've had many patients, including myself, where my cholesterol looked reasonable, but my advanced lipids, when we looked beneath that, we saw some significant issues. Now, part of this was fueled by the type of diet I was following at the time. And so, again, I think understanding your cardiovascular status currently can help you make decisions about the right approach for things like diet and the type of exercise and so forth. So I really strongly encourage all of you to get your labs done. But again, it should be what we would think of as advanced lipid profiling and certainly advanced blood sugar profiling. Because what we understand about cardiovascular disease, remember, is that it's a combination of being overweight, not managing blood sugar well. So this is prediabetes, diabetes, insulin resistance, um, the lipid management. So, what your cholesterol and the advanced profiling looks like, and then problems with hypertension. So these are the key areas. So what are the solutions? I could talk for days about heart health, but the idea for today was just to give you sort of an overview and help you understand that this is something that you can't just assume is okay because on the outside you look all right and you don't necessarily have any symptoms or have a family history. I would encourage all of you to make sure that you're regularly tested. And the solutions are going to be mainly lifestyle, right? The things I've already discussed, right? Having good sleep, adequate stress response management, adequate exercise, and proper diet are the keys. And I've talked extensively about that. If you want more information, you can look back at some of the previous recordings of these Q&A sessions, or certainly reach out to me. But nutrient support is very important as well. And all of the companies I work with have great natural nutrient support to help you manage your lipids, to help you manage hypertension, to help you manage your blood sugar. But again, those things are only effective if we're doing our baseline lifestyle. And that starts with planning and preparation. So hopefully item number 2 is something that you'll all pay really close attention to. And again, reach out to me if you're interested in any of the supplements I talk about, any of the testing that I mentioned. And certainly if you want more information about how I can work with you to help you optimize your health. So have a great Wednesday, everybody. I will see you right here next week at 9 a.m. For 3 things you need to know. Take care.